Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for the kind introduction. I appreciate that it's the end of day 2. Someone was joking with me earlier that this is very much the graveyard shift. I prefer to think about it more as the headline act, but I'll let you guys decide after we've spoken for about 10, 15 minutes or so. So quick introduction. My name is Chris Free. I'm the general manager for Uber here in the UAE and in Doha. I'm from London, as you can hopefully tell by my accent, although it's getting a little bit messed up the longer I stay in this part of the world. I worked in consulting. I was at Accenture for a while. I worked for a small venture capital firm in the US. And then I joined Uber. So I joined Uber about 2 years ago. And I joined as a launcher. And as a launcher, what we were doing is we were going into new cities, and we were basically launching the product. You find a local team, you build the product, you find the demand, you find the supply, you get things going, and then you move on to the next one. And it was a really, really fun thing to do. But because we've grown so quickly, I kind of put myself out of a job. So I had nothing else to do. You know, unless I spoke Chinese or I spoke Russian, there was not really much to do in the launch world at that time. So my old boss said, come to Dubai. There's tons of stuff to do in the Middle East. So I moved here about a year ago, and it's been an incredible journey. I'm loving it so far. My email address is there, christopher@uber.com. If you have any questions, email me. Come and speak to me afterwards. And say hi to the team. I think there's a bunch of Uberites here in the audience. There they are. We got a T-shirt on we're representing. Come and say hello, ask any questions. So I'll talk to you guys a little bit today about how technology is really helping people move around the world. You know, Uber's been here now for about 5 years, coming up to our 6th year. Started very small, but it's grown very big, so we can talk a bit more about that as we go through the session. So this was my first mobile phone, and I'm sure for a lot of you it was your first mobile phone, right? I had to actually Google it last night. I think it was a Nokia 3210, although I may have got that wrong. But all you could do on this thing, all I used to do was play Snake. Play Snake, maybe send a few text messages, make a few phone calls, but that was about it, right? You could do nothing with it. And then about 8, 9 years later, smartphones really became a thing that you just had in your pocket. It was a lot bigger than the phones you used to have back then, but you could do a lot more with it. It was very easy to use. You started to use it to listen to music. You started to use it to watch TV, to listen to YouTube, whatever it might be. And then Uber came around, and you started to use it to press a button and get a ride. And it was the very ease of that process that made us successful and made us grow very quickly. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the evolution over the last 5 years. You know, most people are familiar with the story now. Uber started really as an idea in 2009 at the Le Web conference in Paris. It was a snowy evening. It was rainy. People were leaving the clubs. And Travis and Garrett, our co-founders, they just couldn't get a car. They couldn't get a taxi. They both had smartphones in their pockets, and they were frustrated by this. And so they went back to San Francisco. They basically hacked together a little system, a little platform. They hired a black Lincoln Town Car, and they experimented with their friends to see if anyone would like to use this. So you can kind of see on the map here that on the far left-hand, on my left-hand side, the little dot that's in San Francisco. And the idea started to really generate a lot of momentum very quickly. People liked the idea, the concept of pressing a button, getting a ride, accessible, quick, safe, really resonated with people very quickly. So we started to really evolve, we started to move, we started to launch these new cities. And the guys went back to Paris in 2011. That was our first international city. And we also started to gain some momentum in the US. So we launched some cities over in the East Coast, Chicago in the middle there. And then 2012, we got to London just in time for the Olympics. We did some more European cities. We launched in Spain, which we then left, but we're now back, I'm pleased to say. We launched in Amsterdam, which is now our international headquarters. And then obviously the progression across the US continued to be strong. 2013 was where we started to move to India, to China. It was our Asian expansion. And excitingly, I think for this city, I think Dubai was the 44th city. We launched here in August 2013, and Doha followed shortly after. I think it was about our 55th city. So we really people started to interact with this application. They started to realize that you press a button, you get a ride. That's a really powerful thing. And if you can press the button and get a cheap ride, an affordable ride, then the growth becomes really interesting. And that's what happened in 2014. We just kind of went crazy. This is the year I joined. This is the year when I guess the launch team was kind of at its peak. And we launched 200 cities in 1 year. And that's an amazing feat unto itself. You know, I know what it's like to launch 1 or 2 cities, but to have a team launching 200 was incredible. And what happened as you grew and we got that scale is we started to get into this amazing cycle, right, where you had shorter wait times because you had more cars on the road. Incomes for drivers increased because they were doing more trips per hour. You know, previously they might have been sat outside a hotel in Dubai, for example. In a day they might do 4 trips. Uber comes along, they go from doing 4 trips to 8 trips, right? So if you can half the cost of those trips, they're making the same amount of money, but you're paying half that cost as a rider. And our goal, our ambition in every city we go in is to have a car in front of you within 5 minutes, any time of day, anywhere in a city. Granted, in some places we're not quite there yet, but that's our ambition, that's where we want to get to. And when you have a super efficient system like that, it means you don't have to have pre-booking. Pre-booking becomes obsolete, it becomes a thing of the past, right? You don't need pre-booking because the system is so utterly efficient, you can rely on it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get a ride. And so now we're global, right? We cover the world. We're making a difference to millions of people every single day about how they go from point A to point B. We're in 400 cities, 69 countries. We're doing 5 million trips a day. We have over 1 million driver partners. And that is incredible because if you think about where we started, it was only 5 years ago. But the team has just grown so quickly. They've done amazing things. And you've realized that if you can give someone a cheap ride, that really resonates, and it becomes a solution that people, instead of using it once a week, they start to use it 2 times a week and maybe 3 times a week. And I think there's really a misconception in the industry that we're not local. We are local, right? We're in every single city we're in, more or less. We have a local team. We're on the ground. We have to understand the nuances of the different cities we work in. We have to adapt. We have to provide a service that works for that city, right? So if you think about MENA, we're in 14 different cities, and each of those has its own local twists. But we're still delivering that same safe, reliable service that our brand has come to be associated with. So places like Cairo, where we have sexual harassment training for drivers because we know that's an issue. Numerous cities across this region, we have different payment methods, whether it's cash or whatever else it might be. You know, on the far right-hand side there, India, we launched Uber Moto in Asia, providing people a ride on the back of a scooter. Again, just a local product. I think most recently in Egypt, we've just launched rickshaws in one of the beach areas. However, being global does have its advantages, and people come to rely on this service no matter how much they travel. They assume when they land in a city they can open up the app, they can press the button, they can still get that same service that they get in London, in New York, in Dubai, in Nairobi, wherever it might be. And I think this really resonates well for Dubai because between 30 and 50% of our rides at any one time are done by tourists. So we want to be that reliable service where people land at the airport, they open up the app, they can get a car in 5 minutes, they can use that same service to transport them around the city during their stay. They trust it, they know the system, they know it's safe, they know if anything is going to happen, we've got their back. And then they take it to the airport and they go on to the next city. And this network keeps growing. This is just a snapshot of eyeballs 2 days in March of people basically opening up the app. And the really fun thing here is that people are opening up the app in places we don't even exist in. They want this product. They've seen what it can do. And I think this part of the world is really interesting and it's exciting, and that's why we announced at the end of last year that we're going to put $250 million into growing this region. We're excited to be here. We can see that we're making a difference. We're going to grow the number of cities we're in. We launched in Lahore about a month ago, and that's growing incredibly well. But there's also a big gray space over here, over my right-hand shoulder, which is Africa. And so Africa is going to become increasingly interesting. We're only in a handful of cities in Africa, in South Africa, in Nairobi, in Lagos, I think Abuja, Mombasa. But there is a whole big area there where we haven't even touched. And so watch this space in terms of 2016 and what that looks like maybe in 6 months' time. And I think the reason it's working is because we're solving real-world problems, and we found real product-market fit. Cairo is a great example. This is basically when Cairo launched. It launched in the end of 2014. So that's Cairo, a little dot over there. San Francisco, established city, at that time 4 years old. You fast forward 1 year later, San Francisco's doubled in size, which by any business is an incredible thing. But Cairo's grown 200 times. That's amazing. That basically means that we are now able to offer safe, affordable rides to a hell of a lot more people in this region than we were necessarily a year ago. But there's two sides to every story, right? So at Uber, we think about ourselves, well, we are a marketplace, and so a marketplace has two customers. It has riders on one side, and it has drivers on the other. And I think the driver stories are things that sometimes get a little bit forgotten. But in this part of the world, technology is enabling these ladies, these men, to make more money, to give them more economic opportunity, and I think there's some really good stories to tell. This clicker's being a little, there we go. We've now got about 15,000 active driver partners in MENA. 6,000 of those did at least 100 rides last month. And so the exciting thing is, though, guys are looking at this platform and they're saying, yes, it's Uber, I can maybe, traditionally they would look at it and say, yes, I can use my car and make some money. But guys are really now looking at this with an entrepreneurial lens, and they're saying, how can I use this platform to actually build a business? How can I drive for a little bit of time, work hard, make some money, then maybe buy another car, employ someone to drive that car. I'm now an owner of a fleet. I can start to grow that fleet beneath me, and I can actually create a valuable, sustainable business. And we're not just creating economic opportunity, but we're creating better economic opportunity. People are able to make more money by using this system. In Cairo, we asked drivers, why do you drive? And 64% of people said they drive to earn more income to better support themselves and their families. And that's a really, really powerful message that we need to play more across this region of economic empowerment and using technology to really drive that forward. And Dubai has a million incredible stories. Every time you guys get in an Uber, which I hope is often, you should always talk to your driver and ask him about his story, because they are really, really powerful. These guys come here, they work hard, their families stay back in their home countries, and they send about 50% of their earnings back to their families every single month. And if you think about it, an average Uber driver, they're probably sending close to about $1,000 a month back home. And that's a huge amount of money when it goes to a village in Pakistan. And it means that these guys can use that money to help accommodation for their families, medical care for their families, schooling for their children, or to pay off their debt. And the hard part, though, in terms of how we grow, is making sure that the two sides of that equation are always in balance, right? The two sides of that marketplace. And this is a really, really difficult thing to do, but it's key to our success, and it's key to making sure the platform is as efficient as we can, and we can give you guys the cheapest rides possible. If the supply grows quicker than demand, it means that you have more cars on the road. It means that they're doing less trips per hour. It means they're not making as much money as they could. They get disgruntled, they leave the platform. On the flip side, if demand grows quicker than supply, it means you have less cars on the road, you have more people wanting to take a ride. It means the ETA is going to be higher, so riders get frustrated. It means that surge pricing kicks in, which I know everyone loves, and starts to put people off. And so you have to make sure that you're growing in balance, because otherwise the system doesn't function properly. So our next act, and I think what we really want to do now, is figure how can we take what we've done now, establish this platform, and start to make a tremendous difference to some of the problems that cities can have. Do you mind just playing the video? So you can see that if we can use the technology we have and actually put more people in one car, then we're starting to make a real difference to cities' problems around congestion, around pollution, and some of the other problems that they might face. So, how do you best utilize the assets you have on the ground in a more efficient and a scalable way? And this is kind of what we refer to internally as the perfect ride. And it's basically an Uber pool trip. So someone gets in a car, they drive down the road and they're going in one direction, someone else also wants to go in that same direction. So as long as they're not more than 2 minutes off that track, they'll pick them up, they'll bring them in the car, they'll then go on their way, they'll get out, someone else might do the same thing, you get another person in the car, and so on and so on. So potentially you can have this endless journey for a driver. It never stops, he or she makes more money. The rider in there pays either 50% or 25% less because they've got more people in the car. And so what it does is it allows you to actually take cars off the road. So you don't see pictures like this on the Sharjah-Dubai corridor anymore because you're transporting that same amount of people with half the number of cars. And so where we found that governments are willing to embrace this type of solution, they're willing to push the boundaries and think about ways that we can use the assets we have to move people around, then we're really seeing things like this take off. Things like this are also a problem. This is a car park. 15% of real estate in most metro areas are dedicated to car parks, whether they are multi-story or whether they're outside of office space. And that space can be used much, much, much better if you don't have to park a car there for 12 hours a day whilst it's doing nothing. And it makes a real difference. It's not just a hypothetical thing that we talk about. We saw the simulation in San Francisco on the video, but this is real life examples, right? This is Los Angeles. We did 5 million pool trips in 8 months, 150,000 gallons of gas saved, 8 million driving miles saved, and nearly 1,500 metric tons of CO2 emissions prevented. So it does make a difference. This is the thing that governments should embrace. We should regulate. We should find a way to make this happen. But the innovations have only just begun, and this is what's so exciting about Uber, is we have 1,000 engineers sitting in San Francisco whose brains are like 3 times the size of mine, all doing crazy stuff. And it means that we can basically give you the most efficient marketplace you can get. So it's always on demand. We have to have cars in the right place at the right time, so we never have to do pre-booking. We can do things like forward dispatch, so a driver, before he even drops you off, he's got another trip coming, so he never has to go offline. We can do things like Uber Commute, which is another variation of Uber Pool. Mapping, we know, is not great in this part of the world, so we'll build our own. Right? We'll take all the knowledge we have, we'll take the 5 million cars we have driving around the world every single day, and we're going to map the world. And we're going to put a traffic layer on top of that, which is then going to suggest things like, where's the best place to get picked up? If you walked, 500 yards down the road, would that be better than getting picked up in the office you're in right now? Safety, safety, safety. We're always using technology to improve safety, things like facial recognition to make sure that the right driver is driving your car, using the telematics in the phone that a driver's using to basically relay messages about, are they braking too quickly, are they accelerating too quickly, are they going around a corner too fast? And product innovation, right? Eats, Rush, family, business. We're doing so many things. We've got a chopper sat at the Atlantis, which is going to pick me up in a few minutes and take me off somewhere else. Would be nice. And then API integration. So how do we take the experience of Uber, that tap a button, get a ride, and put it into every single application that you guys use in your phones every day? And I think that's something unique to Uber, and it's something that I think just demonstrates the power of the team that we have. So guys, that's it. Thank you very much.